Marcus Wellington stood frozen in the doorway of his baby daughter's nursery. His expensive Italian shoes felt glued to the marble floor, and his heart pounded so loud he thought it might wake the whole house. And there in the soft pink glow of the nightlight sat Aduni, his Nigerian maid, holding his 3-month-old daughter Sophie close to her chest as the baby nursed peacefully. And Marcus felt his world spinning because his wife had died giving birth to Sophie, and the doctors had said Sophie needed special milk because she was born too early. They had tried everything, formula after formula, but Sophie kept getting sick, losing weight, and the doctors were worried. So he whispered, What are you doing?" His voice shaking, and Aduni looked up with dark eyes filled with tears, gently moving Sophie away and covering herself with a blanket, apologizing in her gentle Nigerian accent that Sophie would not take the bottle and was getting weaker, admitting she was feeding her own milk because in her country, when a mother cannot feed her baby, another mother helps. Explaining she still had milk after losing her own baby last year. And the room went silent except for Sophie's soft breathing as she looked peaceful for the first time in weeks, her cheeks with color and no crying, Marcus sitting hard in the rocking chair with his mind racing, angry and confused, but seeing his daughter healthy, asking how long and hearing 3 nights as Aduni explained the formula was making her sick and she had tried to tell him, but he was too busy with work. And Marcus buried his face in his hands, realizing he had been working 18-hour days since his wife died, missing what Sophie needed most, telling her she should have told him, but she reminded him he had said never to bother him at night, and to let the nanny service handle everything. And Marcus remembered the 5 different nannies who had failed while Sophie cried and refused to eat, now sleeping like an angel. Aduni saying she knew this was not right in his culture and offering to leave but help him find someone. Marcus staring at the woman who had worked for him for 2 years, cleaned his house, cooked his meals, sent money to Nigeria, and never complained even when he was rude. Realizing he had never seen her as a person, but now she might have saved his daughter's life, asking about her baby and learning his name was Kemi, who would have been 1 year old. That she came to America pregnant after her husband died in a car accident, hoping for a better life. But Kemi was born here, got very sick, and lived only 3 months. Marcus saying he was sorry, hearing how she had no money for hospital bills, worked 3 jobs, and that Mrs. Rachel had been kind to her. How the milk never stopped because of sadness, and when Sophie came home crying, it sounded just like Kemi, making her want to help. Marcus seeing Sophie's color and easy breathing, realizing the formula was making her sick, hearing Aduni explain some babies cannot handle artificial milk, and in Nigeria it is normal for another mother to feed a child. Marcus looking out the window at his big house and all his wealth that couldn't buy what Sophie needed, asking why she hadn't told him sooner, recalling dismissing her concerns, admitting he was wrong, both looking at Sophie as she slept, and the next morning Marcus canceling all meetings to stay home, watching Aduni care for Sophie with songs in her language, Dr. Williams visiting and saying Sophie's weight, color, and breathing were good. Marcus explaining Aduni was feeding her breast milk, the doctor saying it made sense but they should test her health. Marcus asking if she would help officially, her tearful surprise, the doctor saying wet nursing was normal in many cultures. That evening Marcus talking to her in the kitchen for the first time as an equal, asking her whole story, hearing about Lagos, her teacher parents, her dream to be a nurse, meeting her husband David, his death by drunk driver, being blamed and cast out by his family, using her savings to come to America for her baby's future. But Kemi got sick, she worked 3 jobs, paid hospital bills, and wanted to die but kept going. Marcus realizing she had carried grief while working in his home, learning Rachel found her through church and paid her more than her other jobs. Rachel never telling him because she respected her privacy. Marcus ashamed and apologizing, Aduni saying grief had made him forget himself, both admitting they missed those they lost but had Sophie now. Marcus lying awake thinking of her strength, getting the call from Dr. Williams 3 days later that she was perfectly healthy, finding her rocking Sophie and telling her the good news, then offering her a new job not as a maid, but as Sophie's nanny and wet nurse, officially. I don't understand. Marcus took a deep breath and said, I've been a terrible father. I've been so lost in my own pain that I almost let my daughter starve. You saved her life. You know what she needs better than I do. But Aduni replied, But Mr. Marcus, I am just a maid. And he said, No, you're not just anything. You're a mother. You understand babies in a way I never will. I want to pay you a real salary. I want to give you health insurance. I want you to help me raise Sophie properly. And when Aduni stared at him asking, You are serious? He answered, completely serious, but I have conditions. And her face fell as she asked, What conditions? To which he said, First, you have to stop calling me Mr. Marcus. Just Marcus is fine. And when she looked confused, he added, Second, you have to eat all your meals in the dining room with Sophie and me. No more eating alone in the kitchen. And when she started, Marcus, I don't think, he interrupted. Third, I want to pay for you to finish your nursing degree, online classes, night school, whatever works. Sophie will need you, but someday. You might want to help other children too. And her mouth fell open as she asked, You want to pay for my education? And he said, Rachel always said education was the best gift you could give someone. And fourth ... Pausing, I want you to help me learn how to be a good father. I don't know what I'm doing. And with tears flowing down her face, she asked, You would do all this for me? And he answered, You're saving my daughter's life every day. It's the least I can do. And after a long silence looking down at Sophie, she said, In Nigeria, we have a saying, when fate closes one door, it opens another. I thought when Kemi died, all my doors were closed forever. But maybe he brought me here to help Sophie. And Marcus said, Maybe he did. And the changes came slowly but steadily as Marcus moved Aduni from the tiny maid's room to the large guest bedroom next to the nursery, bought her a computer for her nursing classes, and hired other people to do the cleaning so she could focus on Sophie. And at first, eating meals together was awkward because Marcus had forgotten how to have normal conversations. But slowly they began to talk, with Aduni telling him about Nigerian culture, her dreams of becoming a nurse, and her family back home, while Marcus told her about his business, his childhood, and how much he missed Rachel. And Sophie grew stronger. Every day, laughing, reaching for both Marcus and Aduni, becoming a happy, healthy baby. Until one evening when Marcus's business partner James came for dinner, saying, The house feels different, warmer somehow. And Marcus replied, Sophie is doing better. But James said, It's more than that. You're different too, less angry, more present. And at dinner James met Aduni officially saying, So you're Sophie's nanny? And she replied, Yes, and I am studying nursing at night. And James said, That's wonderful. Marcus told me you've worked miracles with Sophie. And Marcus watched them talk, James treating her with respect, reminding Marcus of Rachel. And after James left, Marcus and Aduni sat in the living room while Sophie played on a blanket, and she said, James is a good friend, and Marcus agreed, adding that James said he was different now, to which she replied, You are different. You smile more. You play with Sophie. You ask questions instead of just giving orders. And Marcus picked up Sophie, who giggled and grabbed his nose, saying, I had forgotten how to be human. Grief made me into someone I didn't recognize. And Aduni replied, Grief is like that. After Kemi died, I was angry at everyone, angry at God, angry at the world. I thought everyone else was the problem. And when Marcus asked, What changed? She said, Mrs. Rachel. She saw my anger and she didn't judge me. She just kept being kind until I remembered how to be kind too. And Sophie babbled happily, looking the two adults who loved her. And Marcus said, She's lucky to have both of us. And Aduni agreed, She is. But 6 months later, everything changed again when Marcus's sister Victoria came to visit. Living in New York and rarely coming, but now wanting to see for herself the arrangement. And Victoria, a successful lawyer, never liked Rachel and definitely didn't approve of Marcus's new situation, saying, "This is highly irregular, Marcus," while sitting in his study as Aduni was upstairs with Sophie, and when he asked, "What's irregular about it?" she said, "Having your maid nurse your child, it's inappropriate," making Marcus feel his old anger rise as he replied, "Aduni saved Sophie's life. She's not my maid anymore. She's Sophie's nanny and wet nurse." But Victoria said, "It's weird. What will people think?" And he said, "I don't care what people think. I care about Sophie being healthy and happy." But she pushed, "You don't really know her. What if she has ulterior motives?" And when he asked, "Like what?" she suggested, "Like getting you to fall. For her, replacing Rachel, getting access to your money." And when Marcus called it ridiculous, she insisted, "Have you checked her background thoroughly? People lie." And that night Marcus couldn't sleep, her words echoing, planting seeds of doubt. And the next day, while Aduni was at classes, Marcus looked through her room, feeling terrible but driven by suspicion, finding nursing textbooks filled with notes, letters from Nigeria, a photo of baby Kemi, and then a notebook in English that looked like a diary, which he knew he shouldn't read, but opened anyway, finding an entry from 2 years ago about Mrs. Rachel's kindness and hopes to repay her. Others about Marcus's grief and praying for him. Sophie getting sicker and her milk possibly helping. Then one about secretly feeding Sophie so she could sleep peacefully despite fearing Marcus's anger. And he felt sick not from what he read, but from why he was reading it. About to close it when he saw a recent entry about Marcus becoming the man Rachel said he was, Sophie growing strong, and Aduni finding purpose again, ending with, "I pray every day that nothing happens to break this beautiful life we've built together. Sophie needs both of us, and maybe we need each other too." And when Aduni returned from class that evening, Marcus was waiting in the living room while Victoria was out, giving him time to think. "How were your classes?" he asked, and she replied, "Good. We learned about premature babies today. It made me think of Sophie and how far she's come." And Marcus looked at this woman who had become so important to his life, tired from studying all day but immediately checking on Sophie before thinking of herself. And he said, "Aduni, I need to tell you something." And she sat down looking worried, asking, "What is it?" And he admitted, "My sister. She said some things about you, about us." And when she asked, "What kind of things?" Marcus felt ashamed and said, "She thinks you might have ulterior motives for helping us." And Aduni's face went still as she asked, "What kind of motives?" And he told her, "She thinks maybe you're trying to manipulate me because of my money or trying to replace Rachel." And the room went completely quiet with Sophie sleeping upstairs, the house feeling frozen, and she asked softly, "Do you believe that?" And Marcus looked into her eyes saying, "No, I don't, but I ... And she finished, "But you looked through my things to be sure." And his heart sank as he asked, "How did you know?" And she answered, "The diary was not exactly where I left it." And he said, "Aduni, I'm so sorry. I don't know why But she interrupted, "You looked because you were scared. Scared of trusting someone again, scared of being hurt." And Marcus nodded, feeling terrible, and she asked, "What did you find when you read my private thoughts?" And he said, "I found that you're exactly who I thought you were. Kind, honest, someone who cares about Sophie and about me." And she stood up saying, "Marcus, I need to say something." And when he tried, "Please let me apologize first," she insisted. "No, let me speak." And he stopped talking, and she said, "Your sister is not completely wrong," making Marcus feel his heart stop, and she explained, "I do have feelings for you, not for your money, not to replace Mrs. Rachel, but because you are a good man who was lost in grief, and I watched you find yourself again. I watched you become a wonderful father. I watched you treat me like family when no one else ever has." But she added, I would never act on those feelings. You are my employer. Sophie needs both of us focused on her, not on complicated emotions. And I would never want you to think I helped Sophie for any reason except that she needed help. And Marcus said, Aduni. But she told him, I think it would be best if I found another job. Someone who can take care of Sophie without these complications. And Marcus said, no, louder than intended. And when she repeated, no, he said, no, you can't leave Sophie. Needs you, I need you. And when she said, Marcus ... he told her, I read your diary, and you know what I realized? I have feelings for you too. And she looked shocked, and he continued, not because you saved Sophie, not because I'm grateful, but because you're the strongest, kindest, most amazing woman I've ever known. Because you see the best in people, even when they don't deserve it. Because you made me remember who I used to be. And when she asked, what are you saying? He said, I'm saying my sister was wrong about your motives, but maybe she was right about one thing. Maybe there is something happening between us, and maybe that's not a bad thing. And when Victoria returned from dinner to find them talking quietly, she asked, what's going on? And Marcus told her, Victoria, I need you to apologize to Aduni. And when she said, apologize? For what? He replied, for suggesting she had ulterior motives, for making me doubt someone who has been nothing but honest and helpful. But Victoria hardened, saying, Marcus, you're making a mistake. You're thinking with your emotions, not your brain. And he answered, my brain tells me Sophie is healthier and happier than she's ever been. My brain tells me Aduni has never asked for anything except the chance to help. My brain tells me to trust the evidence I see every day. And when she asked sarcastically, and what does your heart tell you? He said, my heart tells me that I'm falling in love with her, making Aduni gasp. And Victoria said, you can't be serious. And he replied, I'm completely serious. But she protested, it's been less than a year since Rachel died. You're rebounding. You're confused. This woman has manipulated you. And he cut her off. Stop. Don't say another word about Aduni. She has been nothing but good to this family. And when Victoria snapped, she's your maid. He said, she's a nurse, a mother, a woman who saved my daughter's life, and I don't care what her job title is. And when Victoria asked Aduni, and what do you say about all this? She replied, I say I care deeply for your brother and for Sophie. I would never do anything to hurt either of them. And when Victoria said, how convenient, Marcus told her, that's enough. But she continued, do you know what people will say? A white billionaire and his black maid? The gossip will be everywhere. Your business partners will wonder about your judgment. Sophie will grow up hearing whispers about her father and her. What would you call her? Stepmother? And Marcus said, anyone who has a problem with it doesn't deserve to be in our lives. And when she said, you're being naive. The world isn't that simple, he replied. Then maybe it's time to make it simpler. And she grabbed her purse, saying, when this all falls apart, don't say I didn't warn you. Slamming the door as she left, and Marcus and Aduni stood shaken, and she said, she's not completely wrong. And when he asked, about what? She said, about the world, about what people will say, about the challenges we would face. But he asked, do you care what people say? And she said, I care about Sophie. I care about you. I don't want to make your life harder. And he said, you make my life better every single day. And she told him, this is complicated, Marcus. And he replied, the best things usually are. And they stood looking at each other until she asked, what happens now? And he said, now we take it. One day at a time. We focus on Sophie. We see where this goes. And when she asked, and your sister? He said, Victoria will come around eventually, and if she doesn't, that's her choice. And that night Marcus slept peacefully for the first time in months. Sophie was healthy, Aduni was part of their family, and the future felt full of possibilities instead of problems. And 6 months passed until Sophie's first birthday party, where she was a healthy, happy toddler calling Aduni Mama Dun and Marcus Dada. And Marcus and Aduni's relationship grew slowly, holding hands while watching Sophie play, talking late into the night, supporting each other, celebrating together. And Aduni finished her nursing degree and worked at the children's hospital 3 days a week while Sophie stayed with Marcus. And one evening Marcus told her, "I'm proud of you," and she replied, "I couldn't have done it without you believing in me." And he said, "You could have done anything. You're the strongest person I know." And later he took her hand saying, "I have something to tell you. I love you. I'm completely, totally in love with you." And she said, "I love you too." And he told her, "I want us to be a real family, all 3 of us." And she replied, "We already are a real family." But he said, "I mean officially, I want to marry you." And with tears she asked, "Are you sure?" And he said, "I've never been more sure." And they called his parents, who were happy, his mother saying Rachel would be glad, and Marcus saying he thought Rachel sent Aduni to them. But Victoria was harder to convince, visiting again and insisting he was moving too fast, and he told her, "It's been almost 2 years since Rachel died. Aduni and I have been building this for over a year." And she said love makes people do stupid things. And he agreed, but said those stupid things were trusting and building kindness, and told her he'd marry Aduni whether she approved or not, asking if she wanted to be part of their family. And she said she wanted him happy, and he asked her to get to know Aduni. And later she apologized to Aduni, who forgave her. And the wedding was small and perfect in the garden with Sophie as flower girl, Aduni in a simple white dress, Marcus in a navy suit, Dr. Williams officiating about love and service, and Marcus vowing that Aduni saved Sophie and him, and Aduni vowing God had prepared her to love Sophie too. And when they kissed, Sophie yelled, "Yay!" And the reception was joyful with business partners, nursing friends, and Victoria giving a speech. And as the sun set, Marcus and Aduni danced with Sophie giggling at their feet, and Marcus asked, "Are you happy?" And she replied, "I'm home." And 5 years later, Marcus stood in the doorway of another nursery, watching Aduni nurse their newborn son David, named after her late husband. Marcus stood in the doorway, the golden afternoon light streaming in through the soft white curtains, painting the nursery in a warm glow. It was a moment that felt achingly familiar, yet completely transformed from the first time he had stood, frozen at the threshold of a nursery years ago. Back then, his world had been shattered, his heart consumed by grief, and his mind clouded with fear and doubt. Now as he leaned against the doorframe, his eyes softened at the sight before him, Aduni, sitting in the cushioned rocking chair, gently cradling their newborn son, David, against her chest. Sophie, now 6 years old and full of life, sat cross-legged on the rug beside them, humming a lullaby she had learned from her Mama Dun, her little fingers delicately stroking her baby brother's tiny hand. David's eyes were closed, his breathing slow and steady, his small frame perfectly content in the safety of his mother's arms. Aduni looked up and caught Marcus watching. Her smile was the same one that had melted away the walls he had once built, so high a smile that spoke of resilience, of love that had been tested by fire and yet emerged stronger than steel. Marcus crossed the room quietly, his polished shoes now stepping onto the soft rug without hesitation. He crouched down beside Sophie, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "Is he asleep?" he whispered. Sophie nodded proudly. Mama sang a special song. It works every time. Aduni chuckled softly, her voice a low melody that carried warmth through every corner of the room. "It's a song my mother used to sing to me when I was a baby in Lagos," she said, her gaze flicking between Marcus and their children. "It means rest easy, little one, your family is here. Family." The word resonated in Marcus's heart more deeply than it ever had before. Not the cold, obligatory kind that was bound by blood alone, but the chosen kind built through trust, sacrifice, and the courage to love again when the world had given you every reason to close your heart forever. He thought about how far they had all come. The man who had once drowned himself in work to avoid feeling anything had now found joy in the smallest moments. Sophie's laughter in the backyard, the smell of Aduni's home-cooked meals, the peaceful quiet of the nursery. At the end of the day, he remembered the arguments with Victoria, the doubts he had wrestled with in the dead of night, the shame of having looked through Aduni's private thoughts, because fear had whispered poisonous what-ifs into his mind. He remembered the first time he had admitted, out loud, that he needed her, not just as Sophie's caregiver, but as the heartbeat of their home. And he remembered the wedding day when Sophie had shouted, "Yay!" as they kissed, sealing their vows with laughter instead of just tears. As Marcus stood there, he realized that every trial, every difficult conversation, every moment of vulnerability had been worth it, because they had led here to a life he couldn't have imagined years ago. A life where love was not limited by past losses or the opinions of others, but expanded daily in ways that surprised him. Sophie leaned her head against his side and whispered, "Daddy, when I grow up, I'm going to be just like Mama Dunn." Marcus's throat tightened. He looked at Aduni, who met his eyes with a mixture of pride and humility. "That's the best thing you could ever want to be, sweetheart," he said, his voice thick with emotion. They stayed like that for a while, Aduni humming softly, Sophie watching her brother sleep, and Marcus simply soaking in the moment. It was the kind of scene you wanted to frame in your memory forever, the kind you wished you could hold on to when life inevitably brought storms again. But Marcus had learned something over the years. You couldn't stop the storms from coming. What you could do was make sure your home was built strong enough to stand through them. And this home, this family, was unshakable. Aduni gently shifted David to his crib, her movements slow and deliberate, as though placing the most precious jewel in a velvet-lined box. She adjusted his blanket, kissed his forehead, and whispered something in Yoruba that Marcus didn't fully understand, but felt in his bones. Sophie tiptoed to the crib to peek in, her eyes wide with wonder at the tiny miracle inside. Marcus reached for Aduni's hand, lacing his fingers through hers. She gave his hand a soft squeeze, and in that simple gesture, he felt the weight of everything they had survived: the loss, the doubts, the whispers from people who couldn't understand, the endless nights and early mornings, the quiet victories and hard-won trust. They had walked through fire and come out not just intact, but whole. As they stepped out of the nursery together, Marcus glanced back one last time. The sunlight had shifted, casting a golden halo around the crib. David stirred slightly, but didn't wake. Sophie had already skipped down the hallway, talking excitedly about the cookies she and Mama Dunn were going to bake. In that moment, Marcus knew without hesitation that this was exactly where he was meant to be. Not in the boardroom, not in the endless cycle of deals and deadlines, but here, in this house, with these people, his people. He thought of Rachel, and instead of the sharp ache that had once accompanied her memory, he felt something gentler, a quiet gratitude. He liked to believe she had sent Aduni into their lives, not to replace her, but to remind him that love could take new forms, that family could grow in unexpected soil, and that even the deepest wounds could heal. He wrapped his arm around Aduni as they walked toward the kitchen, where Sophie was already clattering bowls onto the counter. The air was filled with the promise of warm cookies, shared laughter, and a life lived fully. Marcus felt lighter than he had in years, and he knew, deep in his soul, that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Because this wasn't just a second chance. This was a new beginning. And for anyone watching their story unfold, there was a lesson tucked into every scene, reminder that love is not about perfection, but about persistence. About choosing to stay, to listen, to care, even when it's inconvenient or uncomfortable. About seeing the person in front of you not for what they do, but for who they are. So as this chapter closes and we leave Marcus, Aduni, Sophie, and little David in their sunlit kitchen, baking cookies and building memories, I want to leave you with this. Never underestimate the quiet ways love can change your life. It might not look like the fairy tales. It might come in through the back door when you least expect it. But when it does, hold on to it, nurture it, let it grow. And if you've enjoyed being part of this journey, if their story touched your heart or made you see family in a new way, do me a favor, hit that like button, because it helps us bring you more stories like this. Subscribe so you never miss the next chapter in our storytelling series. And most importantly, share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that love can find you anywhere, even in the most unexpected places. Because maybe, just maybe, someone out there is standing in their own doorway, waiting for their life to change.